Morning. So it is day 2 of my 3-day trek. I've just left the delightful village of Amersham, stayed dry overnight, and I'm off on the next leg of this journey. It's going to take me from here in Old Amersham through Amersham town and then up to Hemel Hempstead, another overnight stop. So yeah, let's get cracking. So this is kind of an estate of really lovely arts and crafts style houses that were all built around Amersham as part of this whole thing of Metroland. This whole idea that you could buy a house, commute into London, and you're out in the countryside, yet you have all of the accessibility and all of the trappings of getting on the tube, getting into central London in 45 minutes an hour. Well, it didn't take too long. This is the rain starting. I think it's going to be set in for most of the day. So yeah, cracking on. A bit of cover from this beautiful woodland that I'm walking through. But yeah, looks like we might be getting a bit of a soaking today. So I should probably tell you a little bit about new towns, because Hemel Hempstead, where we're going today, is a new town. Now, it's not one of the original ones. Those were set up in the early part of the 20th century, and the very first one was Letchworth Garden City, and that was first envisaged by Ebenezer Howard, actually at the back of the 19th century, and he wrote about it in his book. Translating the mud here. He wrote about it in his book called Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Real Reform. Not that reform. And he established this whole idea of new cities, new towns out in the countryside to serve the growing population and to house the population of London. So that original garden city of Letchworth was started in 1903, built right at the turn of the century, and then Welwyn Garden City followed shortly after. What then happened was, after the war, obviously London was on its knees, huge displaced population after the Blitz, and a real need for new housing. So a whole new wave of garden cities and effectively new towns was announced, and Hemel was one of those towns, alongside Stevenage, Crawley, Basildon, Bracknell, Harlow, Corby as well, and a few others. So that's the kind of origins of the new town element of Hemel, but of course there was a settlement there for many centuries before that. So Hemel was really one of the first new towns that was built around what was an existing settlement. We'll talk a bit more about that, and also the concept of new towns that the government has now announced. So we'll talk about that as we go along today to navigate all this mud. So, slight change to the signage now. Shows we are in Hertfordshire. So it's right the way through Bucks. So another county ticked off. On this stage of the walk, having walked up a massive hill. And now I'm out of breath. Talking a bit more about Hemel Hempstead. So the settlement actually existed there since the 8th century. It's a very old historic part of that town, and in the 18th, 19th century it was a very thriving agricultural market town. And then after World War II, in 1946, the government purchased a total of 24 square kilometres of land all around Hemel and designated it as a new town, planning permission to build houses. And actually it was only 2 years after that the first residents moved in the late 40s. The original plans for the new town were drawn up by Geoffrey Jellicoe, who's an architect, and he had this vision, and he said that this wasn't going to be a city in a garden, but a city in a park, and we'll see some of that a bit later when we get into Hemel Hempstead. The whole thing of new towns is they didn't just stop there. In fact, in the early 60s, the government then announced it was going to be the second wave of new towns that were going to be built. And we had Telford, which is part of the Midlands conurbation, Dawley in Shropshire, Skelmersdale in Lancashire, Redditch in Cheshire, Runcorn also in Cheshire, and Washington in Tyne and Wear. And those were all built in the 60s through to the 70s as part of that second wave of new towns. And then there came a third wave of new towns in the late 60s to 70s. That's when Milton Keynes was established, Peterborough in Cambridgeshire, Northampton in Northamptonshire, and Telford in Shropshire, and central Lancashire, Newtown. So we had this third wave of new towns, and of course we've now got this new concept of new towns that the Labour government announced in 2024 that they were going to start a commission for new towns, and just last month that commission reported back on the list of 12 new towns, and there's a list of where those are going to take place. And in the south we've got the development in Cruise Hill near Enfield, and of course the expansion of Thamesmead, and the government have said that they are going to make sure that they start with those, and then they're hoping to get planning permission, start building by the end of this decade. So some bold claims, but a long history of new towns, and Hemel is the first of a number of new towns that we'll see on this route. Nearly fell over then. And yeah, we'll talk a bit more about it and have a look at it when we get there. On the edge of Hemel Hempstead now, just a bit further down there, just over to here, over this way, past that head over there, that's over to Berkhamsted. It's drizzly and grey now, nearly there. Not really Greenbelt related, but this is the famous magic roundabout in Hemel. That's how you get round it. And then this is it up here. I'll show you it a bit more in a minute.